In this lesson, we will learn why groups are such an essential rigging component. We can think of a group as a container that can transform, meaning it can move, rotate, and scale. Now, this may seem quite basic, but we can do so many really neat things with groups. We primarily use them for organizing and rigging assets. So, for example, without a group, if we were to take a look at our Objects Manager, we wouldn't be able to clean up our Objects Manager. We'd have a clutter here, and it'd be a nightmare to work with our objects. But thankfully, again, we have this container that we can quickly collapse if we need to, or expand to get to objects we need. So what we'll do here is use a group to create our global control. This global control is used to translate, rotate, and scale our asset in case we need to reposition it for our shot. Alright, so let's say we go ahead and create a group. We can do so by first selecting our object and then choosing Objects, Group Objects, or the hotkey is Alt-G. What you'll see is that a null has been added. And if we were to expand that null, you can see, of course, our objects are contained within. You can see now the animation control is a child of our null object, meaning that it will now follow whenever we move our null. Let's go ahead and rename this null. So we can use a naming convention of grp for our prefix, followed by the name of the object it contains. So that's anim pvtol. All right, beautiful. Now you can see, again, we need to make sure that this is ready for animation. We need to go ahead and zero out our transforms. So let's go ahead and freeze them. And then we could check our animation control. You can see that it will have an offset once we have added the group to it. So we just need to go in and freeze our transforms on the animation control as well. And we're good to go. All right, great. So next we need to think about how we will control this group, because again, it's very inconvenient to do so from the Objects Manager. So let's say we go ahead and head over to our Attributes Manager, and we'll go ahead and show the group. We can do that from the Object tab, and underneath Display, we can go ahead and switch this to, let's go ahead and work with Circle. And now we can start to increase the size of this circle quite a bit. Let's go ahead and continue to bring up its size, maybe to about 1400. And that is most certainly easy to select. Now, another issue we have here is that it may be difficult to see at times, simply because right now it's colored black. So depending on what kind of assets we're working with, again, it might be kind of challenging to see. So what I like to do is work with bright colors. So let's go ahead and select our object, and what we'll do is head back over to our Basic tab. We'll go ahead and use Color, and then we'll simply go ahead and work with the base color of white. That's much better to work with. Great. All right, so now that we have our group in place, it has been recolored. Let's say we go ahead and create a few more groups for our wing and then for the pod. All right, so again, we need a way to conveniently control these assets. With the wing selected, we can go to View, scroll to First Active to find that object, and then that will take us to its group. Here it is. So with the wing group selected, let's go ahead and test its axis point by pressing the R key to go to our Rotate tool and start to rotate, and you can see it's ideal. It's right where it should pivot from. All right, beautiful. So with this selected, this group, what I'll do is just go in, and I'm going to give this a prefix of anim since we will animate this group. And then next, let's go to Object and give it a new display. So for its display, we can always work with, let's say, a triangle. It's really what you'd like to use. I'm going to go ahead and start to increase the size of this quite a bit. Start to bring this up. And then I'll also make sure that instead of having it oriented to the camera, we could have it point in the direction of the ship to kind of follow its shape. So what we'll do is go ahead and switch its orientation to our last choice, X and Z. All right, you can see that we need to bring down that shape just a little bit here. So I'm going to go ahead and set the size to about 400. Much better. Let's also make sure it is frozen. You can see that we need to go ahead and clean up its transforms. All right, it's ready for animation. Let's go to the Basic tab. We'll go ahead and change its color as well. Again, so we have a very easy way of finding and animating this object. And we could go ahead and work with the color of yellow. So I'll just go ahead and drop the B channel and choose OK. Beautiful. All right, so we are making great progress. Let's say we go ahead and create just one more for the pod. All right, so what we'll do is again select one of the objects of the pod, and now we can go ahead and use scroll to first active. And here it is. You can see, taking a look at its hierarchy. Actually, I'll go ahead and scroll up just a little bit more just to make sure that we are selecting the right object. And here it is. It's the PVTOL pod group. So let's go ahead and take a look as we start to rotate. Or you can see its pivot is slightly off. We need to fix its axis point. So I'll show you how to do that. That's going to be the topic in the next lesson. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and again just make sure that this is going to be ready for animation. So first, going to our Object tab, let's go ahead and give this a new display. Let's go ahead and work with rectangle this time. For the orientation, we could go ahead and work with our second choice. That way it projects towards the side of this pod, and now we can start to increase the size here. So you can see with these objects going in different directions, and with them colored differently, again, the animator has a very fast way of going in and grabbing these objects, and they'll know exactly what they're intended for. So with this object still selected, just taking a look at things, we won't necessarily need to freeze this just yet because we're going to go ahead and change its axis point in the next lesson, and after we do that, we'll need to update our coordinates so that they're frozen out. But what we will do is make sure it is recolored. Let's go to our Basic tab. We'll go ahead and turn on Use Color. Let's go ahead and work with green. So I'll go ahead and drop the R and the B. Beautiful. All right. Remember, since we're going to animate on this object, we'll go ahead and give it a prefix of anim underscore, and we're good to go. All right. So we have created a set of groups, and a few of these are our animation controls for the aircraft directly. And then remember this global group here, this is what we'd use to offset the ship when it's time to animate our shot. If we need to offset it from its current position, we could also use it to tie in connections. That way we are still free to animate our airship directly while the group holds connections that we would use to, let's say, have it fly along a path or do all sorts of really neat things that we can automate. So that's the end of this lesson. In the next lesson, we will learn how to modify an object's axis.